McGraw-Hill Professional presents Friction, the untapped force that can be your most powerful advantage. Written by Roger Dooley. Narrated by Michael Anthony. Introduction. Do you read introductions? I usually don't. At best, I skim them. Most authors use them to explain why they wrote the book. Then the author summarizes the sections and chapters, telling you what lies ahead. Instead, I'm going to start with a short fable, a modern-day fable, of course. If you aren't a fan of fables, don't worry. The rest of the book will be more traditional in style. If you really don't like fables, feel free to skip ahead to the first chapter. The Friction Goggles, a modern fable. Evelyn and Aidan were senior managers at Packard Packaging, a mid-size supplier of cardboard containers and other shipping materials. It was Saturday morning, and the office was empty. They were in the big conference room, hurrying to put the finishing touches on a presentation for the CEO Monday morning. The pair had been tasked with cutting costs by 10% in the customer service department. "Sales are down, and the competition is brutal," the CEO had explained. "We have zero chance of hitting our year-end profit target if we don't get costs in line with sales right away." Evelyn and Aidan groaned inwardly when they heard that their target was 10%. This wasn't the first time cuts had to be made. In a previous round, they had installed an interactive voice menu system to process incoming calls. The CEO had been delighted when he saw that the new system reduced the calls handled by agents by 20%. A few open positions didn't have to be filled. One agent left to take a new job. Expenses were lower, and nobody had to be fired. But this time, cutting an additional 10% was going to hurt. The agents taking the calls were already working at capacity. Evelyn had come up with some additional tasks that could be handled by the voice menu system. "We've got a list of the most common questions agents get asked, so we'll build a new question and answer menu. And the IT department says they can fix it, so if a customer wants to know the delivery status of an order, they can enter the order number right on their phone. No agent needed." Aidan agreed that this looked like the best solution. They analyzed the call volume and guessed that they could reduce the number of agents by the mandated 10%. Evelyn supervised the call center staff and didn't look forward to choosing which agents would have to go. And she knew that scheduling problems would multiply. It was already hard enough to get agents to cover the extended hours the call center had to maintain. The pair had worked out the details during the week and needed only a few hours Saturday morning to finish the presentation slides for Monday's meeting. "I can't believe we're the only ones in the office," Aidan said. Evelyn nodded, reaching for a donut. She had bought a dozen, thinking they could share them with anyone else working on Saturday. To her surprise, there was nobody else there. Then again, it was her first Saturday visit in months. "I think everyone is working so hard after the last round of reductions that they can't wait to get out of the office for a couple of days. A few years ago, Saturday mornings were a lot busier in here," she said. "And somehow, I don't think the cuts we're proposing are going to make people feel better about the company," Aidan added glumly. Evelyn was closing the donut box when a head peeked around the corner and said, "Hey, can I have one of those?" She and Aidan both jumped. When she saw who it was, she slid the box over. "Sure. Take two, Sam. I bought way more than we needed." Sam was the head of sales and was the last person Evelyn expected to see on a Saturday. "I had to swing by to pick up some paperwork. I'm jumping on a plane first thing Monday," he explained. He inspected the donuts, grabbed one, and took a big bite. Apple-filled. My favorite," Sam mumbled through a full mouth. As he devoured the pastry, Sam leaned forward conspiratorially. "Hey, I noticed something on the way over here. Looks like Edna forgot to lock the safe. I thought about trying to close it up, but I didn't want to go near it. Edna scares me." Sam stood. "Gotta run. Tea time in an hour. Thanks for breakfast," he said, flashing the same smile he used to charm customers. He popped the last bite in his mouth and was gone. "I sure didn't expect to see Sam in here," Evelyn said. "At least we unloaded one of the donuts. I should have given him another one for the road." She looked at Aidan and asked quietly, "Do you think we should check out the safe? It's not supposed to be open." The safe was actually a small room in the executive suite with a big sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." It was located behind Edna's desk. She was the CEO's assistant and had held that position for the past 5 CEOs. She wasn't the most pleasant person, but she guarded the CEO like a pit bull protecting a sirloin steak. She deflected almost every request to meet with the CEO, a service he and his predecessors apparently valued. "I think we should leave the safe alone," Aiden replied. What was Sam doing in the executive offices anyway? Sneaking around? Evelyn quickly said, "I'm going. That safe shouldn't be open. Who knows what's in there?" She got up and began to walk briskly toward the executive offices. Aiden hesitated and then jogged to catch up. The executive offices were normally the quietest place in the building, and on Saturday, the area was as silent as a tomb. Thick carpeting absorbed any sound from their steps. The doors to the executive offices were all closed. Glancing toward Edna's desk, the pair saw that Sam had been right. The safe door was slightly ajar. "Can we just push it closed?" Aiden asked. Evelyn replied, "I don't know if that will lock it." She confidently strode around Edna's desk and inspected the door. "We should take a peek inside to be sure everything is okay," she said. Aiden was horrified. How would we even know if something was missing? We don't know what was in there to begin with. And what if there are cameras? Evelyn scoffed. "Cameras? Ha! No way. We didn't even get a parking lot camera until Tricia got her purse stolen on her way to her car. Besides," she continued with a sly smile, "haven't you ever wondered what's in there?" "Not really. What are you expecting? Jewels? Gold bullion? We're a packaging company. We don't do any cash business. It's probably a bunch of files." "Well, we can make sure that nobody trashed whatever was in there before we lock up," Evelyn said, tugging the heavy door open. A bare bulb came on as the door opened, illuminating the small room. It seemed that Aiden's guess was correct. A bookcase on one wall held ledgers, some leather-bound. They had dates on their spines, and the oldest went back to the earliest days of the company a century earlier. "Wow, I bet there's some interesting stuff in those. Back then the company made wooden crates," Aiden observed. Another wall had a row of file cabinets, presumably filled with more modern records. He turned to go. "Everything looks shipshape. Let's get out of here," he said. Evelyn turned too, then stopped. "What's that?" She pointed to the bottom shelf of the bookcase. Barely visible in the dim light, there was a wooden box that looked as old as the antique ledgers. It was bound with brass, now badly tarnished. "What do you think it is? A box of Spanish doubloons?" "Probably just more old stuff they didn't want to throw out," Aiden scoffed. Evelyn ignored this, bent down, and picked up the box. "Damn, this is heavy," she said, placing it on a small table that was the room's only piece of furniture. "Are you nuts? We're going to get canned," Aiden blurted. "Put that back, and maybe they won't notice anything." "Where's your spirit of adventure, Aiden? We'll never get this chance again." They stared at the top of the box. A small drawing was etched into the brass plate. "Wow, nice work," Aiden said. It was a diagram showing a cylinder laying in a groove on a table. Something, maybe a weight, hung from one side of the cylinder. "Hey, I recognize that. Give me a second," Evelyn said, studying the simple but elegant diagram. "Got it. It's from one of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks. It's a friction experiment. Not many people know it, but da Vinci discovered the force of friction. You know, when two things rub against each other? He tried different materials and setups, and even calculated what physicists call the coefficient of friction. He showed how things move when friction is low and stop when it's too high." "Is there anything da Vinci didn't do?" Aiden asked. "Anatomy? Helicopter designs? The Mona Lisa? But I never heard about him in high school physics." "That's because his work was lost for years. It took nearly 2 centuries before other scientists discovered the same laws of friction as da Vinci. Eventually, Leonardo's experiments were uncovered when people dug through his journals. And I guarantee you, this picture is a lot like one of his friction sketches. Aidan shrugged. How do you even know this stuff? I definitely want to be on your team next trivia night. But what do you think this is? Evelyn didn't hesitate. The box was unlocked, and she lifted the heavy wooden lid. It was lined with red velvet, now faded and slightly threadbare. There was just one item in the box, a pair of goggles. The goggles had round lenses and looked straight out of the Victorian era. Brass fittings and leather trim completed the effect. Totally H.G. Wells, Evelyn commented. I was thinking more Jules Verne, Aidan retorted. Now can we go? Wait, I want to see how these look on you. Evelyn pulled the goggles out of the box. To Aidan's surprise, the leather didn't crumble into dust. She thrust the goggles at Aidan. Here, just look through them. Almost as an involuntary reflex, he took them. You are nuts, he said, and held the goggles in front of his eyes. Two things happened almost simultaneously. As he peered through the lenses, he became dizzy. The view of the little room took on rainbow hues that flickered, and then a flash of bright light startled him. Sorry, did I scare you? Evelyn said, holding up her phone. I wanted to get a picture of you with those things on your face. Let's swap, and you get one of me. Aidan was happy to get rid of the goggles. He still felt a bit disoriented as he took her phone. Let's just get out of here, and don't break those things. They are probably valuable. Evelyn held the goggles up to her eyes, holding just the ends. Take my picture, she said, pasting on a selfie smile. As Aidan snapped the photo on her phone, she wobbled a little. Whoa, I got dizzy there for a second. We need to go. She carefully returned the goggles to the box, closed it, and returned the box to its original location. With one last glance around, to be sure there was no evidence of their intrusion, the pair exited the safe. Evelyn pushed the heavy door, and it closed with a satisfying click. Let's wrap up our slides and go home, Evelyn said, looking slightly rattled. The duo returned to the conference room where their laptops were open and sat down. Aidan stared blankly at his screen. I hate to say this, he said, but I think the plan we just spent 3 days putting together is totally wrong. Evelyn paused and said glumly, I know, you're right. We're going about this all wrong. If we add more options and the paths to our automated phone menus, we're going to make our customers wait even longer to talk to an agent. We're already getting complaints about the system now. People want to know how to bypass the whole thing and get to an agent. We don't let them do that now because we thought too many customers would go straight for a human. Well, that should be telling us something, Aidan continued. You were saying we designed the system to make our customers spend time and effort so we wouldn't need as many agents. I've listened to a few recordings from our system, and some customers get seriously frustrated. I heard one screaming, representative, agent, operator, anything she could think of to break out of the menu. It didn't work. I agree, Aidan. I heard one customer call our system every nasty name he could think of. Then he hung up. But what are we supposed to do? The CEO says we have to cut costs. A few seconds of reflection caused them both to burst out. That's the problem. Making our customers work harder and waste their time to cut costs on our end is a death spiral, Evelyn proclaimed. Sales will go down. Before long, we'll be back in cost-cutting mode again. We need to make things easier for our customers if we want to grow sales. They started batting around ideas that would let humans answer the phones more often. What if, during peak periods, supervisors took customer calls? No time. They are always in meetings or working on reports for management, Aidan countered. Almost as soon as he said those words, Aidan burst out, what if we cut out a lot of that stuff? Half the people I see in meetings are on their phones or laptops doing who knows what. Evelyn chimed in, and nobody looks at most of the reports we generate. So you're saying we need to make things easier for our own people so they can make things easier for our customers? That Actually makes sense, Aidan replied. Soon the duo was bubbling over with enthusiasm. Why had they not seen all this before? Everyone assumed things had to be done a certain way. Employees weren't happy because they were wasting time on red tape and bureaucracy. Customers weren't happy because they weren't getting personal attention. Instead, they were bogged down in outdated systems for placing orders and getting help. If someone was shipped the wrong product, getting a return authorization was a chore for the customer, even though it wasn't their fault. Just getting the return approved required a manager to sign off on it. And what a mess things were internally. People spent way too much of their time in meetings and dealing with in-house email. Getting the simplest thing done required multiple signatures. The budget was so tightly controlled that small expenses that would yield big results had to be postponed until the next accounting period. Even expense reports were time-consuming. A short trip to visit a customer had to be approved in advance and then ended with having to document everything, even a $2 coffee, with receipts. Evelyn and Aidan fed off each other's energy. It seemed so obvious now. They discarded their original plan and started from scratch. Soon they were finding ways to streamline customer interactions, often making things easier for their own staff at the same time. If the customer doesn't have to call to authorize a simple return, and the agent taking the call doesn't have to get a supervisor's approval, everyone wins. They looked at how people were spending their time in the office and found lots of ways to save there too. Meetings had proliferated like mushrooms. Most of them could involve fewer attendees, and some of them could be eliminated entirely. Dated rules and procedures could be dispensed with. Evelyn ordered a pizza so they could keep working. As they ate, Aidan asked, "So what's with the box and goggles? Did Da Vinci make them?" No way. They are old, but not 600 years old. They remind me a little of that steampunk stuff you see pictures of," Evelyn continued between bites. "I have to admit, I felt a bit woozy for a minute when I put them on." "Me too," Aidan said. "Things looked different, but it's hard to explain. I sure hope nobody notices we were in there." "Don't worry, nobody will know, but it was kind of exciting, right? And after, something sure got us fired up. I can't believe we were on the last slide or two and decided to toss the whole presentation and start over." "Probably the adrenaline. I was sure that battle-axe Edna was going to jump out from behind a file cabinet and yell, 'Gotcha!'" Evelyn chuckled at the image. "I guess it could have been the excitement. I was a little scared, too. But I've been thinking, what if the picture on the box was a symbol? Think about it. That diagram is from the first experiment that discovered friction. And then, when we got back in here, we started seeing friction everywhere. It was right in front of us before, but now we're seeing it, and we can't stop seeing it." "Right. So those are magic friction goggles," Aidan teased her. He paused and added, "But I do feel like I was seeing things differently after our little adventure in the safe." "Probably the adrenaline after all," Evelyn said. "Let's get back to work." By the end of Saturday, they were exhausted but excited. Their plan was rough and would require a lot of cooperation from other departments, but they thought it would make customers happy and energize employees. They hoped the CEO felt the same way on Monday. The CEO leaned back in his chair as Evelyn and Aidan filed into his office Monday morning and fired up their presentation. "Show me what you've got," he ordered. As they began to explain their new approach, the CEO looked puzzled at first. As they progressed, he leaned back and crossed his arms. His face reddened. He finally exploded. "You had one job. Figure out how to cut costs in customer service by 10%. I was expecting a list of names, not a plan to redesign the company. Where did all this garbage come from? Last week, you had things under control. I've got a board meeting in less than a week, and you are the last department to submit your cost reductions," he thundered. "I'm sure you've got some good ideas in there, but we don't have the time to do them or the money to pay for them." Aidan argued, But these changes won't really cost anything. Getting rid of old and ineffective rules, cutting down on meetings that nobody pays attention in, and eliminating reports nobody looks at? These will all save money, and more importantly, let our people do a better job for our customers. The CEO shook his head. We already had a plan. What happened to you two? It was the goggles, Evelyn blurted out. We put them on and started seeing friction everywhere. Customers who couldn't get through to a real agent, complicated procedures for orders and returns, dumb rules that waste our people's time, way too many meetings that don't get anything done. I have no idea what you are talking about. Have you both gone crazy? The CEO looked even angrier, but then his face changed. Goggles? Did you say goggles? I know we shouldn't have touched them, Evelyn said. It was my fault. Somebody left the safe door open, and when we went to close it, we found the box. I made Aiden put them on, and then tried them myself. They changed everything for us. No point in mentioning Sam's role, she thought. The CEO looked stricken. My predecessor warned me not to even open that box. He didn't know who made them or where they came from. But they ended up with our founder, George Packard, 100 years ago. He's the one who built the company, and back then customers loved us. A few of his successors supposedly used them too during the time the company grew like crazy. But my predecessor said they were dangerous. He ended up getting fired by the board because they couldn't agree on the company's focus. He wanted to put employees and customers first. He said profits would follow. The board wanted him to focus on the shareholders and the quarterly dividend. His only job, they said, was to keep profits growing at a steady pace and protect the payouts. He said he would, but then started to give employees more freedom. They could take care of customers as they saw fit. He loosened some internal controls that were driving everyone crazy. Everyone thought these changes were going in the right direction, but he missed the profit target a couple of quarters in a row. The board wasn't happy and decided it was time for a change. I was the change. On the way out the door, my old friend told me to keep the box with the goggles under lock and key. If I wanted to keep my job, he said, do what the board wants. He said the goggles gave him too many ideas that he couldn't ignore. These ideas were right, he said, and they made sense. But the board was just too impatient. I assumed the stress was getting to him, and he was starting to lose it. Or he was looking for a way to blame his firing on something other than his own mistakes. I ignored the goggles nonsense and never thought about them again. Until now, he added. We're sorry, began Aiden. I still have my original list of people to cut. The CEO looked thoughtfully and sat quietly for a minute. No, I think you two are on the right track. When George Packard founded this company, he wasn't worried about the daily stock price or maximizing short-term shareholder value. He was the only shareholder, and he knew if he kept his customers happy and gave his people room to do their jobs, profit would follow. He became wealthy, and after him, George Jr. grew the company and the family fortune even more. Junior's son wasn't interested in the business, though, and the family brought in professional managers. The company went public and appointed an independent board of directors. I'm just a temporary occupant of this chair, sitting here only as long as the board is happy. The last guy who had this job tried to stand up to the board and got himself booted. But maybe I'll have better luck. They like me, and I know what they want to hear. I just have to convince them that making things more difficult for our customers and our own people might save a few dollars in this quarter, but isn't going to be good for our shareholders in the long run. Missing a quarterly target or two is better than long-term damage to revenue growth. I owe you two. You went out on a limb to suggest a course of action that's right for the company. The CEO stood up slowly and squared his shoulders. Now, come with me and show me what you did. I think it's my turn to try on those goggles. Goggles for you. My intention for this book is to give you and every other reader your very own pair of friction goggles. These goggles will help you discover friction, which I define as the unnecessary expenditure of time, effort, or money in performing a task in all kinds of places. Why friction matters. Friction has a far bigger price tag than people recognize. Here are just a few data points to prove why. In 2016, an estimated $4.6 trillion of merchandise was left in abandoned e-commerce shopping carts, mostly related to friction in customer experience. The U.S. economy loses $3 trillion in productivity annually due to excess bureaucracy. China's economy, as measured by gross domestic product, GDP, grew a cumulative $82 trillion more than India's from 1987 to 2017, even though the two economies were initially similar in size. Can friction explain all these distressing statistics? Not entirely, but I'll show you how friction is a key factor in these results and many more. More importantly, I'll show you how eliminating or reducing friction can have long-lasting and even disruptive effects. Crazy colleague friction. One quick clarification before we get to Chapter 1. I'm not focused on interpersonal friction in the pages of this book. While this is an interesting and important topic, it's not one we will touch on. Instead, we'll see how friction affects the success of businesses and individuals, and even the course of nations. We'll also discuss many ways to reduce friction, or occasionally use it to our advantage. If I have one overriding objective in this book, it's to help you identify friction everywhere, in your work, personal life, and community. Once an enemy is visible, he or she is far easier to defeat. And when we eliminate friction, we make our lives and the lives of those around us better. Your friction goggles. The good news is that by reading this book, you will come to spot friction more easily than ever before. Once you start seeing friction, you can't unsee it. Every time I talk about friction in a speech or workshop, afterward people notice themselves pointing and exclaiming, "Friction!" when they encounter some unnecessary difficulty. That friction was there before, but suddenly these people are aware of it and ready to call it by its name. And I want you to do more than see friction. I want you to do something about it. If you are in a leadership position, declare war on friction. Stamp out ridiculous rules, pointless procedures, and meaningless meetings. Become a relentless advocate for the customer and minimizing customer effort. We'll learn how to do all of that together in the pages of this book. Let's get started. Prologue. Engine of Disruption. Fortune can bring about great changes in a situation through very slight forces. Julius Caesar, Roman leader and general. The battle that defined Julius Caesar as a great general and future Roman dictator for life was in Gaul, now modern-day France. He faced daunting odds. His army numbered 60,000 legionnaires, but he was deep in enemy territory, and a Gallic force of 80,000 was entrenched in the impregnable hilltop fortress of Alesia. Caesar first had his men build a wall to encircle and isolate the fortress. This wall was 12 feet tall, ran for 11 miles, and had battlements and fortifications at frequent intervals. When he realized that Gallic reinforcements would arrive and attack from behind, Caesar had his men construct a second, even longer wall to protect their rear flank. The new wall enclosed the first and was 14 miles long. Eventually, another 250,000 Gallic warriors arrived to join the battle. They attacked the Romans from the rear, even as the soldiers in the fortress poured out to attack from the front. A fifth of the Roman army died in the battle, but the combination of well-engineered fortifications and superior military tactics enabled Caesar to rout both attacking armies. The Gauls remained.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?